East, but the West where niggas stay. Over 1 million bars, yeah, I had a lot to say. Living in the world some motherfucking crazy. You better listen close to what the devil's saying. Fuck it, if it ain't paying, we need it in abundance.
What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker, and today on Unique Access, we have the honor and the privilege of being joined by E.D.I Mean. Thanks for coming through again, sir.
Hey, what's up with it? Good to see you, Soren.
Yeah, man. It's E.D. was one of our first interviews we ever did for the channel, so I'm glad that he was willing and able to come back for round 2.
Oh, I didn't know that, man.
Yeah, man. You were early in the game.
I'm on it.
Yeah, man. Well, we're honored to have you and to have you again. And, you know, when I saw you at the OG Volume 2 Classics in Session, you know, I wanted to get you back on because there's a lot of material on there that I think is really, really good. So first things first, how and why?
Thank you.
Yeah. So how and why did you come up with that title for the project?
Well, you know, I did a project that I dropped, I believe, in 2013. It was called OG, established 1992, and it was more like a mixtape. I had Mike Epps, you know, he gave me the great honor of hosting my mixtape. You know what I mean? For free, didn't charge me nothing, and I did that with DJ X Rated and Black Bill Gates out of Atlanta, and a lot of people liked that mixtape. I started doing other albums though, the Hope Dealer Parts 1 and 2. And OG just had more of a relaxed feel to it. It wasn't too heavy on the subject matter. It was just good music. So I said I wanted to do that again, but just, you know, a little bit better, fine tune it a little bit. And Classics in Session is just a play on words, you know. And I felt like through my music I can teach as well. So it's Classics in Session, because it's classical hip hop music in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think we'll talk a lot about the production because I think it's great on here. And Doughboy had actually hit me up. Yeah, Doughboy hit me up, said he worked on it with you too. So
yeah, man. Yeah, so this was the first time I actually had somebody else helping me pick beats and producers to work with and artists to work with. Normally, when we do like Outlaw projects, it's by committee, and then my solo stuff is just all me. And so I said for OG Part 2, I wanted to bring somebody in, and Doughboy really created the job for himself because I started doing a couple of things with him for his project, and I liked his ear for beats. And so when I started my project, I said, why don't I pull Doughboy in and use his ear a little bit to, you know, get his project a different sound than what people are normally used to hearing me rap on.
Right. Well, that makes sense, and I think it worked well. You know, if this is what it's going to be, that's a great combination and partnership you guys going. And the thing that I thought was interesting, even though the first OG may not have had the heavy subject matter, I think there's a lot of gems and lessons and knowledge in this project. As you've done a lot throughout your career, solo and with the Outlawz, of course. But we'll talk about it, starting off the album. How and why did you want to have the Maya Angelou poem to kick off the album?
Yeah, I found that poem after I had did the song. And so the beat always had that long intro. Shout out to Cali Velli who did that track with those keys. And so I wanted to, you know, put something on that space. I didn't want to lose that because it's so moody. And so, you know, it sets the tone for the album. And I was just, you know, on YouTube one day. I'm a fan of Maya Angelou, you know, off top. Let me say that first. You know, I've always been a fan of hers. We named our album Still I Rise, of course, after the poem. Pac named that song Still I Rise after Maya Angelou. Pac and Maya had a relationship, you know, themselves, of course, because of the movie Poetic Justice that she was in. And so she's always been in my you know, on my radar, so to speak, since I was a little kid. My mom had her book, she's a legend. And so I said, you know, why don't I start the album off with some feminine energy and an OG to tie it all in with the concept. You know, Maya Angelou is an OG in the poetry world, Black civil rights, the whole spectrum. So, you know, when I found that poem, which is actually from an interview she was doing, I think with Dick Cavett, she just, went off the cuff and just started doing one of her poems. You know what I mean? And I said, that's perfect. I like what she was saying. The words are poignant and it just fit perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the song, which is also one of my favorites, Talk About It on the project, how you're talking about walking through life unafraid and never running from your flaws. So, that's something that I think are life lessons. But for you, with each one of those, how did you learn those two things and practice them yourself?
Yeah, life is the greatest teacher, man. Just bumping my head, making mistakes, growing, evolving, all of that in one pot, and you get those, bars, which is true. We can't run from our flaws. They're there to, teach us and help us to grow if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I got you. And then what part of when did that really start kicking in for you on a personal level?
Man, it started kicking in for me when I was, in my 30s and just kind of, just kind of living life. I say at the edge of my seat, just, in and out of relationships, marriages, having kids, making money, traveling, just, doing what I would call the norm as far as manhood and the maturation process for a lot of us. And I started to realize, obviously this is not something that's sustainable. As a human being, it's only a couple of ways this can end up. And I didn't like what I saw. So I just started to change some things about myself. You know what I mean? And I say it happening towards my late 30s.
Okay. Well, it's good that, something I always try to do too is learn from my mistakes and grow. And you talk about grow and develop on the album as well, but I think it's one thing to acknowledge those things. It's another thing to actually take action to change them. And that's
that's when the work comes in.
That's what I was getting to, because it's one thing to first of all, to have the awareness to realize you got these shortcomings, but then to actually act on it to fix them, I think is the hard part. And that's what people, for whatever reason, aren't willing to do.
Nah, because it's tough. You know what I mean? And the ego always wants to be satisfied. We find ways to satisfy the ego very young. It happens almost naturally. And it's a way to protect us. And you can be walking around here and completely delusional. You know what I mean? But you could be making a lot of money. You could be having a lot of success professionally. All of those things could be going right for you. But if the internal work is not being done, then eventually it's going to crumble. We can look throughout history from great people to the average everyday Joe, and we see the example over and over and over again. And I by no means have found, the secret to personal self-development and getting to that level, but I aspire to, be better every day. And I think that's all we can do.
Right. And that falls in nicely to the next song, the Avant mind state of having a new mind state. So, for those that don't know what you're referring to, explain where you got the title from, who he is, and why you came up with that.
Yeah, well, when the documentary Black Godfather came out on Netflix, and it was basically an expose on Clarence Avant, I was inspired by it. I was inspired by his story. I was inspired by the way he moved. I appreciated his bluntness and the fact that he was able to connect with all these different people, no matter their race, color, creed. He just was one of these people that everybody seemed to not only like but respect. And so I was inspired by it. I seen it 3 or 4 times. Every now and then I watch 20, 30 minutes just for a quick, inspiration when I need it. And I decided to do a song. Now that song, when I did it, it didn't even have a title. It had another title that I knew I wasn't going to use. I was just using it temporarily, and I didn't even have a title that I liked for it, but I liked the song. You know what I mean? So I'm just working on a project, and I said, why don't I, I say a line in there about Clarence Avant and Avant Mind State, and so I just was like, let's just call it that, and you know, give it that that royalness, you know, because I feel like Clarence Avant is a king, and he's a kingmaker. You know, that's why he's a king.
Yeah, and also on the song, you start off with the little Ghetto Boys reference from Scarface with Mom playing tricks on me. So what was it about the beat or what you were thinking at the time that made you want to use that reference?
Man, the Ghetto Boys is a big influence on me. You know, Face, Willie D, big influences on me, and I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to work with them, you know, up close and personal, and getting to know them in a lot of different ways after years of listening to them. You know, Pac didn't respect, I wouldn't say respect, but he wasn't a fan of a lot of people. He appreciated a lot of people's music, but I seen him be a fan of Scarface and be impressed by what Scarface did. And I was already a fan of him, and I just felt like they may not get enough credit as they deserve, but I'm inspired by their shit. You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to shout them out. You know, that's how we do in hip hop. You know, we might quote your bar here and there, but that's like a show of respect. That's like the utmost honor when another MC, you know, does that for another MC.
And in the same song, you also did that with Juvenile, which that one was more surprising given our conversations over the years. I knew what you in particular, and obviously Pac, felt about Scarface, but Juvenile was a pleasant surprise. So what made that work well on that song as well?
Yeah, another legend that I had the chance to know and work with. And, you know, 400 Degrees, even though I said 500 Degrees, 400 Degrees, his album, that's a seminal album. That's a classic album, you know, and you know, I just was riffing, coming up with concepts, different lyrics. I really don't write anymore. I actually just go in the studio and just vibe with the track and just tell the engineer, you know, when I mess up, punch me in, and I come up with something else. So it's a lot more spontaneous. It's a lot more free flowing. It's kind of like jazz music. You know, I'm not so calculated when I'm writing everything. I'm letting the music tell a story for me, and I just verbalize it. And that just came out, man, because I'm a Julie fan. Shit, who ain't?
In the beginning, hip-hop was ruled by the East Coast. Then the West Coast rose to prominence, thanks to gangster rap.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
Hip-hop changed the world. Gangster rap changed the narrative.
I'm representing for the gangsters all across the world.
And then changed the world again.
Cause I'll come and take your life away.
The history of gangster rap features unheard stories, unseen photos and documents, all with exclusive interviews from the founders and players who shaped gangster rap.
I think a real gangster rapper has to scare you a little bit.
The history of gangster rap written by veteran rap journalist Soren Baker. In stores now.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Quick. Be sure to pick up my homeboy Soren Baker's book, The History of Gangster Rap, if you really want to know what we do.